Basic Appraisal Principles, page 414. Unit 5, Types of Value. Occupied to tenant-occupied units can indicate a market in decline or revitalization. For example, 5 years ago, the market was 75% tenant-occupied, but at present, it is only 50% tenant-occupied. This type of change may indicate a shift in this market to predominantly owner-occupied, and it is called revitalization. Employment and wage levels. Data suggests that housing prices and rental rates can be directly related to income levels in a market. For example, a market that has predominantly higher income levels is going to have a higher demand for properties in the upper bracket listings. Conversely, markets with predominantly lower income levels will have demand for homes that are considered first-time home buyer residences, which means they are generally listed in the lower bracket. Markets with predominantly lower income levels are more likely to increase demand for rental properties, which might cause the number of single-family properties for sale to increase and the sales prices of those single-family homes to decrease. Rental rates and home sales prices. Price and rent levels of properties in a market generally correlate to one another and should be used to analyze market conditions. If housing prices rise too far out of line with rents, the market will likely see a downfall in housing prices and an increase in rental amounts to bring housing prices and rental amounts back in balance. For example, from 1996 to 2006, Freddie Mac's conventional mortgage house price index revealed that United States home prices doubled, whereas the consumer price index indicated that the increase in rental amounts was half that of home sales over the same period. Then in 2007 and 2008, housing prices began to fall by approximately 35%, and rental rates rose by approximately 10%. This is a typical reaction. Rental rates generally rise when home prices fall. During economic downfalls, new housing and rental property construction stalls, resulting in the limited availability of new homes for sale of rental units. At the same time, the number of people demanding rental units increases as families are displaced after home foreclosures. Potential home buyers become weary of poor economic conditions. Population increases. Potential buyers have difficulty obtaining financing and job losses mount. The cumulative effect of these situations makes renting an attractive solution, thus increasing the demand for rental units, which in turn increases the rental prices. Development of vacant land. Development of vacant land is another economic factor that should be considered when appraising a property. The appraiser should gather information about vacant properties, current construction, and proposed construction in the market. This information, along with data on existing properties in the market, will help the appraiser analyze the current and future supply of inventory. This data will also reveal whether a proposal exists to change a property from a current use to a different use, which might affect a subject property. For example, the subject property is adjacent to an agricultural property. Future development indicates that zoning for the agricultural property will change due to industrial use. The appraiser must determine whether that future change will affect the value of the subject property. Extra notes: the acronym PEGS, P-E-G-S. The P stands for purchase. The E stands for economics. The G stands for government. And the S stands for social. There was another extra note, but I can't even read what I wrote there. It was something about land. Page 415. Governmental includes legal factors. Federal, state, and local governments can influence the value of real estate in the following ways. The provision of public services, police, fire, utilities, etc. A home buyer might be influenced by the proximity of these services to the property, the type of service provided, size of the service as related to the size of the market, and their reputation. The extent and nature of zoning, building, and health codes. Properties are defined by their zoning and building regulations. Some of these regulations can have a positive effect on the property, such as those related to maintenance, sanitation, and the development of complementary properties. Some regulations can cause potential negative effects, such as plans to rezone areas from residential to industrial when they are adjacent to developed residential neighborhoods. Deed restrictions are another venue by which developments can be protected from incompatible construction on adjoining sites. Fiscal policies, national, state, and local. Tax rates and special assessments can also influence buyers. Properties that have significant tax burdens can greatly affect the value of a property. The appraiser should research existing tax burdens as well as proposed future assessments to determine whether they will have an effect on the value of the real estate. Special legalization. That means rent controls, environmental legislation. Some jurisdictions enforce laws that limit the amounts of rent and the amount by which rent can be increased in any year. This is called rent control. These controls could limit the potential income available to an investor. Some jurisdictions have environmental legislation that can affect the real estate values. For example, a city receives a federal grant to help landlords upgrade their properties. Landlords who access the money must agree not to increase rents by more than 2% each year for the following 10 years, or the grant money would have to be repaid. If inflation averages 3% each year over the same 10 years, the landlord would suffer an effective loss of value in the rental income, therefore, a decreased value of the benefit of owning the property and a decrease of market value. An appraisal during that 10-year period would need to analyze that situation relative to what rents would have been without the restriction, market rent. It is the responsibility of the appraiser to gather information regarding the governmental forces in the subject market area and compare them to those in a competitive market to determine whether the government's influences have any effect, positive, negative, or none, on the real estate value.